How we doing out there, everybody? Well, here we are at our ninth week. We are in the second week of our novella unit, and we are reading for this Franz Kafka's probably his most famous work, The Metamorphosis. Um, so it's pretty interesting piece of literature. It is a classic of world literature. Um, Weird, bizarre, um, but that's kind of the point. What Kafka tried to sort of capture through his oeuvre, his work, was this feeling of being an outsider, feeling alienated from the world, from others, but also from oneself, and how to negotiate that, how to find a sense of wholeness in a fragmented sense of self. And that's quintessentially a human issue. I mean, no matter how strong or confident or kind of sunshiny our outlook is, we all have times when we falter in that way, where we feel distance from ourselves or distance from our loved ones or the world around us. Um, so that's kind of some of the ideas that Kafka is exploring and interrogating. And the metamorphosis is especially interesting because you kind of get, you know, slapped with the kind of bizarre, surreal nature of things right out of the gate when the narration begins. Gregor Samsa woke up and saw that he had turned into a giant vermin. Okay, it depends on the translation you're reading. Of course, this was written in German. German is very difficult to translate one to one into English, even though English itself is a Germanic language. Um, so, depending on the translation you read from, some say turned into a giant beetle, a giant roach, a giant monstrosity. Vermin is kind of like an undesirable, loathsome, ugly creature. So, suffice it to say, he wakes up and doesn't recognize himself any longer. Um, and this work really is applicable to so many different things, especially in the social media world. How we identify with our own body image, um, how our actual sense of ourselves, according to us, how we see ourselves. Well, that's one thing versus how others see us. I don't know if you guys can empathize or sympathize, but I know that I view myself in a certain way. And when I've tried to articulate this to peers or friends or loved ones, they say to me sometimes, that's not how I see you really at all. Is that really how you view yourself? Is that really your self perception? So that's kind of what this novella is working with, those ideas. And you can't help but feel for this guy, Gregor Samsa, someone who's working to help his family stay afloat in an increasingly mechanized, technologically progressive world. This is the backdrop here is the kind of the transition from the 19th into the 20th century, industrial boom, um, the preponderance of the factory and making money and, go out and pound the pavement and get yours. And one day, this character wakes up and realizes he kind of has to have a self confrontation. Like, what have I been doing all this time? Um, he has to stop and think about his place in the world. And it's kind of tragic because his loved ones, his family, whom you would imagine would understand him and support him more than anyone else, turn from him. He stays locked in his room, afraid of how he will be judged. Uh, he gets in altercations with his family members, his sister, Greta. That's the one he is closest with, but as we get to the end of the novella, that relationship changes. So It's a tragic story, but it's also a very psychologically rich story as well. You guys had your journal last week on the Kafkaesque, your own experience. And of course, no one's ever turned into a giant bug. You kind of look at that as a metaphor for feeling alienated from yourself or society or from others. And again, Kafka had his own issues. It's said that he had kind of a chronic, I don't know if it was a stomach issue, sort of like Crohn's disease. He had some kind of a debilitating chronic disease that might have affected his outlook. Uh, but a fascinating figure. Um, his works have been picked apart and analyzed and discussed and lectured on these past 100 years. So I thought it would be fun for our latter high school earning college credit English literature class to kind of dive into that. And I don't know if you guys are going to get exposed to Kafka. And I remember when I was first exposed to Kafka, I think it was in high school. I remember my English teacher talking to me about Kafka, the Kafkaesque, and I just found it really intriguing and fascinating. And then I read Kafka. I can't remember if it was in high school or college. The Metamorphosis first, and I was just kind of hooked on this kind of bizarre figure, this kind of enigmatic figure, Franz Kafka, the author, and Gregor Samsa, the protagonist of the Metamorphosis. So it's a work. It's a metaphor for change, for transformation. Um, and it's funny because you might think, oh, he's debased, he's this bug or disgusting creature, but you'll find as you read on, and you guys should be reading. I encourage you to read ahead. We need to be done by with the first section this week, but you'll see as you read ahead that he actually starts to feel comfortable in his new body and realizes that he can do things as a bug or beetle or roach or whatever you want to say, depending on the translation, that he couldn't do as a human being. So that's kind of interesting. We kind of watch his character arc progress throughout the book, and it isn't such a happy ending, but maybe up for interpretation how his character ends up. Be interested to know what you guys think about the ending of this once we get there. So I could ramble on all day about the Metamorphosis. I'm excited that you guys get to read it. This week we have discussion questions. It's not like we have been doing with our reader response where you have to write essentially what's an essay. You don't have to do that this time. There are 7 discussion questions. Just follow the directions. I've posted the discussion questions in the assignment for this week in our Novella folder. You'll see them there. 7 questions. Just give 2 complete, substantive, thoughtful responses for each. For 3 of the 7, though, you need to give in-text citations, textual evidence, and in-text citations. So a direct quote or a paraphrase to support your answer, and then the author's last name, Kafka. The version that I gave you guys isn't paginated, doesn't have page numbers, so you could put the paragraph number in place of what would be usually available, a page number, but I don't think we have page numbers for our version. And that is it for what we need to do, those 7 discussion questions. And then there's a voluntary blog post that asks you to reflect on part 1 and give your favorite and or least favorite literary element of the Metamorphosis part 1. So maybe you like the plot, but you dislike the characters, or you like the setting, but you dislike the themes, or maybe you don't like the themes and you don't like the plot, or you like the setting, whatever it is. Identify these literary elements that are resonating with you or maybe pushing you away, and just give an explanation as to why you chose what you chose for that. That's the blog. It'd be due Friday if you choose to do it. It's voluntary. You don't have to do it. Extra credit For each blog post, about 2 points for each post on your final essay when we get to our play, our research essay. But for now, you want to finish part 1. I recommend that you get into part 2 as well. But finish part 1, and by Sunday night, those 7 discussion questions. 7 questions, 2 sentences, 2 complete, well thought out sentences for each, and 3 in-text citations with textual evidence with in-text parenthetical citations along with at least 3. And I will be getting to your Shakespeare sonnet responses and your second literary analysis as soon as I can. Your grade books are up to date except for those 2 assignments. So I kind of graded the later ones that we did, the last discussion forum, and the journal that you guys had this past week. And now I need to circle back to those older assignments. I have my middle schoolers to kind of tend to this week, grade-wise. We're approaching their third quarter report card, so I got to get all that stuff squared away. But I promise to get some of those backlogged assignments from a couple weeks ago graded and returned to you. So thanks for all of the really well thought out responses you guys are giving. And if you ever need any help or anything like that, I'm only an email away. And I will talk to you again in a couple weeks with another video. Wish you a good week 9. Peace. Bye-bye.